Hey everybody, we've got a pretty red day in the market. As I was getting ready for bed, pre-market, everything was tanking. Bitcoin was heading down towards 90,000. The Bitcoin miners were getting wrecked pre-market. And the market in general right now is definitely a bit more red than green. But you'll see on Bitcoin that is working on a recovery. We just saw a massive amount of liquidations. We got some leverage out of the market. And here's something interesting on the 4-hour. We did see the 4-hour get to oversold, which we don't see very often. And in hindsight, at least throughout this bull run, this makes sense because we've been in a bull run, every time the RSI has gotten to oversold on the 4-hour, in hindsight, it has been a great buying opportunity. I do think this is the same. And from August, we've only seen the RSI on the 4-hour for Bitcoin go oversold 4 or 5 times. So in about 6 months, we've seen an oversold RSI on the 4-hour for Bitcoin, on average around once per month. And while Bitcoin has recently been cooling down a bit from its all-time high, the 200 MA has been continuing to rise. Remember, it is a lagging indicator, but I do think as this heads higher, we will eventually test it later in the bull market. Right now it's at 78,000. In my opinion, it's a matter of time until it's in the 80s. At some point in this bull cycle, we will test the 200 MA. And looking to the 50 MA, Bitcoin is working on reclaiming it after it broke it just the other day. Now, Bitcoin might be positively reacting to this news. It may be reacting to some tariff news. Seems like there are negotiations underway. But check it out. Tomorrow, the White House cryptocurrency czar, David Sachs, will hold a press conference on Tuesday. Tomorrow, like I said. And tomorrow we should see how this new administration and Congress plan to establish the US as a leader in the digital asset sector. And according to this announcement, David Sachs is expected to detail the White House's strategic approach to digital assets. It may include regulatory policies, innovation incentives, national security considerations. Tomorrow could be a pretty big day for Bitcoin. Is a strategic Bitcoin reserve announced? Is there more clarity shed on it? Or is this going to be something entirely different? We'll find out tomorrow. Now, we do have some news. This might be part of why Bitcoin is reacting positively, although the broader market is still red. We do have news that these US tariffs on Mexico were paused for a month. And the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, said Mexico has agreed to reinforce the Mexico to US border with 10,000 National Guard troops. But that's not it. She also said that the US has agreed to work to prevent high-powered weapons from being trafficked into Mexico. This appears to be a beneficial agreement. And while tariffs on Canada remain in place, the president is expected to speak with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it says here that there is expected to be a deal, a permanent deal negotiated with Mexican leaders in the next month. And as quoted by Claudia Sheinbaum, I told him to collaborate. He has agreed to the working group. And that Mexico and US are in fact commercial partners. It is the best way to compete with China and other countries. She also wanted to remind the president that the current free trade agreements between US and Mexico have been in place for about 3 decades. And as a matter of fact, the last free trade agreement was signed by President Lopez Obrador and President Trump himself. Now, we do have some earnings announcements. It's official. CleanSpark is in fact reporting on February 6th. We have confirmation from their investor relations page. They are going to be reporting on Thursday after the bell. And Iren too has an official announcement for earnings. They're confirmed for February 12th after the bell also. Now, looking at CleanSpark, it still has some work ahead of it. It is still under its 250 MA. We were facing a death cross from all the way back in August. The chart has been pretty ugly. Now, looking a little farther back, you can see that CleanSpark has been consistently hitting higher lows, but also lower highs. It is consolidating, it is tightening up for a big move in my opinion, and I do think earnings could be that catalyst. You can see that every time CleanSpark comes down to this lower support line, it is gobbled back up. In hindsight, this line, this ascending support, has been a fantastic buying opportunity. And to be fair, this descending resistance has been a fantastic sell opportunity. I do think it's a matter of time until CleanSpark tests its 52-week high, until CleanSpark breaks that $25 resistance. And I really do think this is the quarter where things start turning around, not just for CleanSpark, but for all the Bitcoin miners in general. You'll see that when you look in past earnings, so first off, this upcoming earnings is expected to be 153 million. This was not long ago expected to be a profit, but it has since changed. Which is interesting because this was expected to be a profit before Bitcoin even made it to those recent all-time highs. But I did want to show you guys, when you look at earnings, look at this decline earnings to earnings. You'll see our last earnings was $89 million reported. Before that was a higher quarter reported. Why was that? This is because the halving went into effect. It took rewards, cut them in half, and Bitcoin miners' fundamentals looked worse because of it. When you just look at their earnings, it looks like they saw a decline. It looks like they are not improving, but doing worse. I do think Q4 for CleanSpark, it's fiscal Q1, but the quarter ending October, November, December. This was a great quarter for Bitcoin, and this is where fundamentals turn around. You'll see that since the halving, revenue has started to decline. They went from profitable to unprofitable. Before the halving, you'll see that revenue was growing massively from 27 million, next quarter of 42, next one 45, next is 52, 73 million, profitable quarter, absolute rally from the threes to $25. Why was that? Because they were profitable. Other Bitcoin miners were reaching profitability at this time, and other Bitcoin miners saw similar charts as well. But you know, this is the first quarter where fundamentals turn around. This is the first quarter where we see revenue actually grow, where we see potential profitability for some. We finally got out of these quarters where revenue was declining, where they were unprofitable, where Bitcoin in some cases was in a downtrend during that time. If you guys remember late summer, where Bitcoin was pulling back, we had some Mt. Gox fears. People started getting worried that Bitcoin wasn't going to make it to 100K, and we know how all that played out. But I do think CleanSpark is setting up for a big breakout on earnings. If earnings is good, if the market digests it and is in approval, CleanSpark still has to take out the 50 and the 200 MA, and we still need that golden cross. Our last golden cross was much earlier in the cycle, was actually on profitable quarters. CleanSpark was pulling back. It posted a profitable quarter. This was before the halving, and it did rally. We saw that golden cross, and we saw some bullish technicals backing up even more of a rally. I do think that's what we're going to see here. CleanSpark needs to clear $13, stay above it for long enough to get this golden cross, to get those more bullish technicals. I do think it's coming, and I do think earnings is that catalyst. Oh, and keep an eye out for investor relations, guys, for CleanSpark, for Iren, for any of your Bitcoin miners. They are starting to report their Bitcoin mining updates. CleanSpark and Iren, as of me looking, haven't reported yet, but we'll probably get it sometime today, tomorrow. Usually it's early in the beginning of the month. Now looking at Iren, this looks like a bit more of a bullish chart. It's been in just a clear uptrend. It is not seeing, you know, lower highs like CleanSpark was, or stuck at a certain level that it can't break out of. Unless you look more recently, Iren had difficulty breaking out of 15. I do think once they can get some profitable quarters, once we see some positivity from earnings, I do think this is the earnings where things change. Massive increase in revenue after they got through seeing a decrease in revenue. Why was that? Like I said, because of the halving, cutting rewards in half. It is a necessary evil for Bitcoin. In the end, Bitcoin benefits massively from the halving, and while on the short term it doesn't appear that the Bitcoin miners do, but in the end they will benefit from the halving. And by that I mean Bitcoin's increase in price will outshadow the cut in half from rewards. Remember, before the halving, Bitcoin was like $30,000, $40,000. Bitcoin is more than double from that price, despite rewards being cut in half. I told you guys this a ton of times, how Bitcoin's performance from Q3 to Q4 is drastically different. All we have to go off from the Bitcoin miners was Q3 and back. Q4 is that first quarter where fundamentals improve. Q4 is that quarter where they see revenue growing again, not declining. Now looking at Iren, every time you buy down at the bottom of this support level, it has in hindsight been a good decision. And every time you trim when it's overbought, when it's showing you RSI divergences. This was a long time ago, but so many people were saying Iren is going to keep blasting off. When Iren came up, double topped, and the RSI topped out on this top, showed a decline. This was a bearish divergence. I showed you guys this. We were due to cool down. So many people were saying we're going to keep running. You're full of it. You're wrong. It's going to keep running up. And here we are, still at $10. I do think $20 is a reasonable target. Some people say it's not optimistic enough. It's not bullish enough. The clock is ticking. We've got anywhere from 6 months to 9 months following the cycle where Bitcoin should top out. We are now well past the halfway mark. Bitcoin has been in a multi-year bull run. We are getting down to the final months of this bull run. We're getting down to that point where these Bitcoin miners start breaking out. You want to start trimming, taking profits, selling covered calls. I do personally think in short time we will start breaking out. We will break this previous 52-week high for Iren around $15. And in my opinion, earnings is that catalyst. So buckle up, get ready. February is going to be an interesting month. We should see a clear improvement from Q3 to Q4, whereas we saw a decline from Q2 to Q3. When the halving took effect, when it started affecting these Bitcoin miners' earnings, when we started seeing decreases in revenue. But you know, stay the course with the Bitcoin miners. If you've waited this long, I think it would be very unfortunate to sell now, see them finish off this cycle strong. I think it's pretty clear that Q4 will show a massive improvement. It's a quarter where Bitcoin went from like 60 something thousand to the 100,000s. The Bitcoin miners are about to be in favor, and fundamentals will back them up. But thanks as always for watching, guys. How are you feeling about today? Did you expect more of a bloody day? Seems like Bitcoin is responding relatively well today. And maybe it's this news that there will be some kind of negotiations with these tariffs. Maybe it's all the leverage traders getting wiped out, clearing the slate for Bitcoin, giving it a chance to break out. The market doesn't want those leverage traders to win. Seems like once leverage gets wrecked, Bitcoin goes on its next move. I do think this is another instance of that. And also, I didn't mention this, but M2 global supply is ticking up again. Bitcoin tracks this 85% of the time. When more money is printed, when more money comes into the world, it directly benefits Bitcoin and other assets. But thanks as always for watching, guys. Keep an eye out for the Bitcoin miners mining updates. Tomorrow should be an interesting day, hopefully giving some clarity to any type of Bitcoin reserve, digital asset reserve. We'll see what happens there. In the end, Bitcoin will do what it has always done, and that's follow the cycle. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.